This was a presentation at the 30th Cool Topic Annual Neonatal Conference in San Diego in March 2024. I was talking about gamification of neonatal education with a focus on the retain game. I would like to disclose that I not only have published several articles about serious games or simulation, but I'm also the inventor and owner of the Retain Labs Medical Incorporation and the copyright owner of the Retain Tabletop and Digital Simulator. Now, neonatal resuscitation is stressful, and in any stressful situation, this can lead to distraction, deficiencies in your decision making, and then deviating from the algorithm. And whenever things like this happen, it's prone to medical errors, which then could also lead to poor patient outcome, as well as fatal errors and death. A Sentinel report from the Joint Commission, who reviewed neonatal deaths during resuscitation, reported that 66%, so 2/3 of them, were due to a breakdown in non-technical skills, like your decision making, your communication and teamwork, and not because you were unable to mask ventilate or provide chest compression. Yet, most training options which currently exist focus on your technical skills. They're resource intensive, they're also time consuming, and you require specialists in simulation and debriefing to improve the output of these simulations. Now, while serious games will be able to take some part of your simulation training away, there will always be place for mannequins to provide and work on technical skills. So these will not disappear, but I think serious games will have a bigger place in your daily, weekly, monthly simulation training. One of the examples, for example, is virtual reality. And what you can see here is that using a virtual reality approach, you will be able to learn or improve your learning on how to place an endotracheal tube or a supraglottic airway. The anatomy of this airway will be projected onto a mannequin, and you will be able to try to intubate, and hopefully with that approach you will have higher success rate. The current neonatal resuscitation training consists of several parts, which includes reading the textbook, completing an online test, listening to a lecture, having several skill stations, and a team or several team simulations. It's also required, at least in North America, that you recertify your NRP every 2 years. Now, this is for recertification. In addition, the 2020 American Heart Association guidelines for cardiopulmonary resuscitation and emergency cardiovascular care recommended that who are trained in neonatal resuscitation should have either individual or team booster training more often than every 2 years. This will help you to retain your knowledge, your skills, and your behavior. A classic example is this study by Medum et al., published roughly a decade ago, which introduced frequent, weekly, 3-minute simulation trainings, as well as a monthly 40-minute refresher. And with these short boosters, in a pre and post implementation study, you can see that initial steps of resuscitation, stimulating suctioning, increased. Incidences of positive pressure ventilation therefore decreased because we're stimulating or potentially suctioning the baby will start to breathe. And most striking, mortality decreased by at least a third, which is extremely significant because it just shows that for a short burst of training, you can have potentially a big impact in outcome. If you look at, for example, race car racing, where it be Formula One, NASCAR or IndyCar, the teams practice their pit stops, in particular in Formula One, as you can see in the picture here, up to 100 times per weekend during a race weekend to get it right. And when you watch it, you can still see that there are sometimes mistakes happening. So they practice it like crazy, while we often don't have the opportunities to do that as frequently in our field. There's certainly a gap where healthcare professionals are unable to access training to safely care for the smallest patient. I think it was even more striking during the COVID-19 pandemic, where you can see that from 100 simulation labs, only a fifth or less than a fifth were open. The remaining one were closed to a certain amount of time, which certainly introduced issues because we had no access to training. An alternative potentially could be serious games which introduce play and introduce and work on 7 basic emotions, in particular on exploration and play, which are essential elements of the game. And those games are around since ancient human civilization. Now, serious games use 6 different approaches to engage you within the game. It starts off with an immersive narrative, which helps you to tell a compelling narrative or story, to immerse you into this environment and provide some autonomy to being held accountable for the learning objectives. It can provide immediate feedback. The immediate feedback could be, for example, that you have to do certain actions, and if you don't follow the sequence correctly, you can't get into the next steps, or the patient potentially dies. It can give you a formative or summative assessment to tell you what you did right and where there are learning objectives which you can improve. It can also provide a pre-instructional assessment tool to identify a learner's strengths and weaknesses so that you then can focus on these strengths or weaknesses. It can include a competition and engagement, which can help to improve learning. Like you could have points or leaderboards, which will stimulate rivalry or foster collaboration to get to a shared goal. These competition effects will affect your emotional state, and it could be either euphoric because you won, so you have euphoric enjoyment, or you're angry and frustrated because you lost a patient or you didn't get to your goal. Either way, it could engage you more in the game. You could have goals and rewards, like a clear objective with a goal, like saving lives, that can then also tap into an individual's internal desire to master it. Other games offer rewards like prizes or recognition, again leaderboards, and points and badges to spark competitions. All these games are problem-solving based, where they present a challenging task or goal, so that you then have a sense of accomplishment upon completion. It can be done anytime and anywhere, and you can choose whatever topic you would like. And that way it motivates your intrinsic and the extrinsic self-determination to help to improve your knowledge. And it uses an emotional design, which means it has like crying or heartbeat to stimulate all of your emotional senses, including your visceral, behavioral, and reflective emotional system. And that way you might get even engaged more. So as you can see, serious games use a lot of different approaches to hook you, and thereby hopefully engage you and improve your knowledge and retention of that knowledge. Now, there is a plethora of stuff available on the internet in regard of games, which can be downloaded. There are virtual NICU platforms available. There are apps on the App Store. Some might not be available anymore, but these were available at some times. There are board games, video games, and virtual reality games available to help you engage learners. Here is an example of 4 different video games. Top right is a game from Drexel University, which really focuses on diagnosing and treating pneumothorax. And on the bottom right is the NLP eSIM, which has been available with the 7th edition of the neonatal of the NLP textbook. Now, I will go into some of the research studies available. Let's start with the eSIM, which was a e-simulation digital game where you had to resuscitate the newborn babies based on the information you were provided. And when the randomized participants to either use this or standard simulation, they found no difference in time to initiate positive pressure ventilation or the frequency of correctly ordering epinephrine. So those things were not different. Some could say that in particular the time to initiate PPV is one of your skills, and that hasn't improved, which might not be the optimal outcome for a game. If you look at setup, it was significantly improved. Requesting ECG leads before chest compression was significantly improved. Also positioning, airway drying and stimulating, so some of the early on technical skills were also improved, as well as directing to do the correct Mr. Soper steps, which were all significantly improved, which might be, some might argue it's a technical skills, but in the end, if someone directs you, it's more like you know the algorithm. So certainly there are some improvements when you use a digital game. Similar with our research using the Retain platform, when you do your pre and post comparison with the board game or the tabletop simulator, you can say there was a improvement in performance on many different aspects of neonatal resuscitation. Interestingly, when we use the cutoff of 65% to see if you can pass an open answer test or an MCQ, when you use the game, significantly more participants passed the test when using the game. Why is that? One of the example was that 20 of the healthcare professionals wrote Mr. Soper as an acronym in the open answer test, but then when we asked them to write down what Mr. Soper means, only 15 were able to do that. Now, those who were not able to write Mr. Soper correctly mixed up the O for open your mouth with oxygen. So if you use an open answer test, for example, or a MCQ where you have the acronym Mr. Soper, you might get everybody right, but in the end, if they don't know what the words stand for, they might not be able to do then the right steps in real life. Within a game, they have to play the right card or click the right action in a computer game before they could move on. So that certainly will help to get those steps correct. Similar when we studied the computer game, we did a pre-test, did 2 training scenarios, we did post-test and post-survey, and then measured their knowledge improvement over time at 2 and 5 months. And on the 5 months post-test, we switched to a different simulation approach. Like instead of a computer, we used a board game to see if it also be transferable. And what you can see is that healthcare providers had 42% of the steps and the algorithm correct. After the post-test, after playing the digital game, it was 82% correct. The same staff followed up 2 months later, we remained at 70, and what was striking, that once we moved them over to the board game at 5 months, the knowledge retention was again 80%. So even over a 5 months period, they did not lose their knowledge, which is certainly something which is important, because you don't want that your staff is losing the knowledge too quickly, so that you don't have to train them too often. There's other games out, like this recently published Neo games for undergrad medical students, which again had 81 medical students participating. They showed a short-term improvements for male students only, but long-term improvement were there in both groups when they were playing with the games compared to not playing the game, and the long-term knowledge retention was almost 3 times higher than in the control group. So similar then to the retain game, using serious games clearly shows that the knowledge retention can be much longer, and it might be due to a newer generation of students and healthcare professionals who are more used to using computers, but there's clearly something within those games that helps to improve your knowledge retention. There's other games that like virtual reality games, like this one, or one like Helping Babies Breathe, who are used to improve knowledge. And the Helping Babies Breathe group did a randomized controlled trial with virtual reality or video for neonatal resuscitation training, and randomized 20 level 2 and 3 healthcare facilities in Nigeria and Kenya to 3 different groups, either control, so just a digital guide, video plus digital guide, and VR, so Helping Babies Breathe plus digital guide. And they will see how the knowledge skills, with particular skills using standardized checklists in a simulation setting, changes 1, 3, and 6 months down the track. Now, what did they find? That the pass rate of neonatal skills at 6 months was similar. When they did their OSCEs, it was similar. However, with bag and mask ventilation skills, there was a greater retention with the virtual reality group, which just shows that the videos again helps to improve these skills. Similar, the pass rate with the VR group was higher compared to the other 2 groups. So in conclusion, I think game-based learning provides a great learning context which can help you to construct higher level knowledge by navigating challenges and iterative scenarios. It is a potential alternative to traditional simulation-based education, but more likely a supplement, so that you can train your healthcare professionals more effectively, more efficiently, anytime you want. Like even at 3 a.m. in the morning, a healthcare professional can quickly run through a digital scenario, which might take 5 minutes. So it can really be done anytime. It will improve your memory, your decision making, your teamwork performance, as well as communication. All of them are available at low cost. So many of these games might cost a few $100s one time, compared to the really expensive mannequins. They are increasingly incorporated in nursing and medical schools' curriculums to reinforce theoretical and practical learning. If you want to know more, please follow us or email us to get more information about Retain or any other work we do. Thank you.